Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating cultural mystery. We're drawing on some incredible insights from a blog post by Atsuko Natalia Hoshi titled, Why Are Brazilian Names So Long? We're going to dive right into the deep connection between language, culture, and honestly, something as deeply personal as the names we're given.
Have you ever actually wondered why Brazilian names are just so incredibly long? Think about it for a second. If you've ever met someone from Brazil or, maybe watched Brazilian sports, you've probably asked yourself this exact question. Like, why is it so tough to tell a Brazilian person's first name from their last name? Sometimes it just looks like a massive string of words, right? And to those of us on the outside looking in, it's kind of confusing to navigate. Well, today we are going to decode exactly how this whole thing works.
To guide us through this, we're relying on the absolute expertise of Atsuko Natalia Hoshi. And let me tell you, she's got a super unique background. She's a second-generation Japanese-Brazilian who was born and raised in Santos, Brazil, and she currently lives in Tokyo, so she brings this incredible wealth of lived experience. Plus, not only is she a licensed Brazilian dentist, but she's actually a director of the Japan-Brazil Central Association, and she represents H&A Consulting, which connects Japan and Brazil through Portuguese classes and seminars. Basically, she is the ultimate cultural bridge, and she wrote this absolutely perfect guide to the mechanics of Brazilian naming conventions.
Okay, so let's dive right in and compare the structures here. Take the standard Japanese naming format. It's highly predictable, right? You've got the surname followed by the given name. Very uniform, very structured. But the Brazilian approach, oh man, it is vastly different. It varies greatly based on the region, the era, and even just family preference. It is definitely not just a simple first and last name. It's this complex, really beautiful multi-layered combination.
Now, to actually understand the length of these names, we first need to look at the origins behind the choices. Brazil is this massive, incredibly diverse country, and families pick names for a whole host of reasons. Some lean heavily on names found in the Bible. A lot of parents absolutely love to use double names, combining a first and a middle name for everyday use. Sometimes, and I love this, parents will pick a name simply because they love the phonetic sound of it. They just set the literal meaning totally aside because it sounds beautiful. And then, very often, they choose names to honor respected ancestors like grandparents or uncles.
And you know that honoring of ancestors actually brings us to a really unique feature of Brazilian names. When a child is named after a respected relative, they don't just share the first name, they actually attach these specific suffixes directly to the very end of their surname. And this indicates the exact family lineage. We're talking suffixes like filho for son, neto for grandson, and sobrino for nephew. So picture this. If a son has the exact same full name as his father, the word filho literally gets tacked on to the very end of his legal name. How cool is that?
Okay, here is a super surprising detail from Atsuko's blog. Despite being literally on the opposite side of the world, Japanese names like Makoto, Naomi, and Akemi are actually widely loved and used in Brazil. And honestly, the wildest part? They are frequently used by families with absolutely zero Japanese heritage, no Japanese roots whatsoever. Atsuko even notes that she personally knew a non-Nikkei family, specifically her family's housekeeper, whose child was named Makoto. It really just goes to show how cultures can totally embrace the sounds and feelings of names from entirely different languages.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why these names get so long. Let's totally deconstruct a typical four-part Brazilian name using the fictional example of Rosana Maria Rodrigues Silva. Here is exactly how it stacks together. First up, you have Rosana, the first name, right? Then Maria, the middle name, which creates that classic double name we just talked about. But here is the real key to the length. She takes Rodrigues, which is her mother's surname, and follows it with Silva, her father's surname. Both parental lineages are completely preserved in one single legal name. I mean, you can only imagine the absolute nightmare of trying to fit all of that onto a standard passport form.
Now, let's see how this exact same structure beautifully adapts for Japanese Brazilians, or Nikkei. Take a name like Paulo Satoshi Santos Okamoto. It just perfectly blends the two cultures. Paulo serves as the Brazilian first name, while Satoshi steps right in as the Japanese middle name. Then, keeping with that Brazilian tradition of preserving lineage, Santos is the maternal surname and Okamoto is the paternal Japanese surname. It's quite literally a merging of heritage right there on the birth certificate.
So, okay, we know how babies get these incredibly long names, but that obviously brings up a huge question. What on earth happens when these individuals grow up and get married? Do the names seriously just keep getting longer and longer?
Well, historically, the rules around marriage and names in Brazil have actually evolved a ton.
Back in 1977, there was this major change where brides were officially exempted from the requirement to take their husband's surname. So many just chose to keep their maiden names entirely. Fast forward to 1988, and a brand new constitution guaranteed absolute equal rights and duties for both men and women. And then, jumping to 2002, the civil code was updated to actually allow men to legally take their wife's surname. So today, Brazilian couples have pretty much total freedom to combine their surnames in almost any way they choose within the naming regulations.
All right, we've spent a lot of time talking about formal legal names. But as you probably know, life in Brazil is famously warm, super social, and really vibrant. So what actually happens to these massive four-part names when Brazilians are, just hanging out, talking to friends, or socializing at work? This is where we hit a really fascinating major cultural contrast. In Japanese culture, if you want to show affection or closeness, you usually rely on universally used suffixes. You attach chan or kun to a name, and pretty much anyone can use them. But the Portuguese language, it completely lacks a direct, universal equivalent to that. Instead, Brazilian culture relies entirely on this deep, super rich nickname culture to show affection and really build those close bonds.
Let's move to and see how this builds. How exactly do they make these nicknames? Well, there are a few pretty specific linguistic formulas they follow. Very often, they just shorten a name to its initial sounds. For instance, Atsuko Natalia's middle name, Natalia, simply becomes Na or Nat. Or maybe they'll use the initial syllable, so a friend named Renata might just be called Ri. And then, of course, there are the famous diminutive suffixes, adding Inha for females or Inho for males. So Paulo becomes Paulino, and Clarissa becomes Claricinha. They're short, they're snappy, and they are deeply affectionate.
But hold on. Here is a really crucial cultural nuance that Atsuko points out. You absolutely cannot just slap Inha or Inho onto the end of any name and assume it works exactly like the Japanese chan. It is definitely not universal. In fact, these diminutives are often specifically reserved for children, for people of a smaller physical stature, or for moments of very close intimate affection. Actually, Atsuko notes that even as a child, she was never once called Natalinha. It's just a rule that doesn't apply to everyone automatically.
Seriously. If you only take one thing away from this entire explainer, please let it be this. In Brazil, insisting on using someone's full, formal name can actually create an unintentional sense of distance. If you want to truly build trust, make real friends, or even forge strong business relationships over there, you absolutely must embrace using nicknames. Honestly, nicknames are basically the social currency of closeness in Brazil.
So the crucial point is this. You can sit there and memorize Portuguese vocabulary all day long, but to truly connect with people, you must master the culture behind it. You need to know exactly when to drop that formal surname and switch over to a friendly two-letter nickname. And navigating those exact nuances is why Atsuko founded the H&A Portuguese School. This isn't just some standard, out-of-the-box language app. It is taught by a bilingual professional with deep, lived cultural insight. The whole curriculum is fully customized, it's one-on-one, and they don't just teach you grammar, they actually teach you the vital cultural and business etiquette. With over 15 years of experience training corporate expats and government officials, it's literally the perfect solution for anyone preparing for a move to Brazil who wants to hit the ground running without constantly relying on an interpreter.
But don't just take my word for it. Take it from a student named Haruna Sasaki. She points out that her family is warmly guided based strictly on their needs, and now her whole family is taking lessons. It's really all about preparing entire families to just comfortably navigate daily life and thrive in a totally new cultural environment. And another student, Yumi, perfectly captured this feeling too. She noted that she got interested not just in the language itself, but in the actual culture and the people. And that's because Atsuko shares her real-time experiences and her visits to modern Brazil. The lessons become this real, living connection to the society, going way, way beyond a traditional textbook class. So if you're feeling inspired to dive deeper into Portuguese, or, if you happen to be preparing for a business trip or a full relocation to Brazil, you definitely have to check this out. We've put links in the description box right below so you can read Atsuko's fascinating original blog post in full and also explore the free trial offerings over at the H&A Portuguese School. Ultimately, learning a language is like getting the key to a secret room you never even knew existed. Whether it's discovering exactly why a single name has 4 parts, or learning how a simple little nickname can literally secure a major business deal, the world is just full of these incredible hidden layers. So, what cultural mystery will you unlock next when you truly connect with another language? Keep learning, keep exploring, and we'll see you in the next explainer.